If you've been collecting plants for any amount of time, I'm sure you've had the experience where you found something that you thought would do really well in your collection, that you would really like, but something about it just didn't quite go right. Maybe the vibe was a little bit off, maybe it didn't grow well for you, maybe you just didn't like the form it ended up growing into. That has happened to me several times over, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you some plants that I will never be buying again, as well as some things that I've kind of replaced them with in my mind and in my collection. For some of these you might agree, for some of these you might think I am absolutely crazy. 2020 Emma would think I'm crazy for some of these, but that's just how it's going to be, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Before we get into it though, I want to say if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you returning. Now let us get into these plants. The first one that I want to talk about is reptilian hoyas. Hoyas like the clementiorum, with those sort of very reptilian vibes. I have never really had a huge thing for them, but I have given them a go a few times in order to try and hope that I could get the vibe, because there are some really interesting ones out there. It's kind of half the Hoya genre is reptilian, crusty, dusty Hoyas. And I didn't want to limit myself to just the other half and really try and give it a go. And I've tried them several times, and Hoyas like that, I just really don't think I'll ever get again. I don't really feel the need to even try anymore with them, especially the ones, I say crusty dusty, is how they feel, like the Caudata Sumatra, or is it the white Wakame Calpo? I might be butchering that name, but they're sort of very matte in their vibe. I much prefer Hoyas that are splashy and silver and speckly and plump and look like they're full of life. That sounds really bad, but it's so true. Hoyas like the Polynura broge I've got here, I absolutely love this one. It's giving me full on gorgeous silver leaves. I love the non-silvery Polynura as well as the variegated ones. Pretty much any Polynura you could ever think of, love them. Also things like the Hoya obovata. That looks so succulent in its leaves. They're so thick and full of life that something about it just brings me joy. Also, it doesn't hurt that it is also a splashy one, and so the vibe is vibing for me. But I'd much rather continue to buy Hoyas like that than the ones that are reptilian or literally crusty dusty looking, straight out of. I know some people like dumpster Hoyas. I know they do. Otherwise they wouldn't be selling them out there, because people like them. I'm just not one of those people. Next up, we've got the philodendron brandtianum. This guy, I had one several years ago. I think I tried a few different ones of it because, in theory, the brandy, right up my alley. Silver heart-shaped leaves, sign me up. It climbs, fantastic. I love that. You can get it to size up, brilliant. I couldn't get it to grow well for me for the life of me. I tried growing it on a stake, I tried growing it on a pole, and no matter what, it just never really took to any of those things, and because of that, it never really sized up the way I would want my brandy to grow. And the terrible way that it was growing kind of made it not worth the beautiful silver leaves. I got rid of this one a couple years ago, and even though I've seen some in shops since, I've never once been tempted to try it again. And I feel like that says something, because I do give things chances. I don't just always give up at the first sign of bad times. But with this one, I just really don't think it's worth the hassle for it. There's a few things in my collection I much prefer. Things like the philodendron majestic has sort of similar silveriness. It's not quite as intense of a silver, but it is still silverier than just a plain green leaf, and that one is so much better of a climber. I've really been able to get mine to size up in the time I've had it. It is propped super easily, and the leaf size, I feel like it's making much more of a statement than the brandy ever did for me, and I'd much rather just grow the majestic. It's also a hybrid philodendron, and so typically hybrids tend to be a little bit more robust than their counterparts. Not that either of them is the brandy, but in general, it is a little bit more of a hardy philodendron compared to the like non-hybridized versions. Something that gives kind of similar vibes in terms of silveriness to the brandy and like the sort of spots it has is a syndapsis. So this one I have here is the syndapsis tricolor, but I feel like a bunch of different syndapsis, rare or not, you could even get like the common argyraeus or an exotica. A lot of those give the sort of same vibes as the brandy without nearly as much maintenance. You can also grow these on a pole. You can grow them hanging down, which you can't really do with the brandy because if you do, it just ends up like the leaf size getting like this big, which, I mean, mine did that on a pole, so you can see how difficult it was. But having something like a syndapsis instead sort of fills that silver splashy void for me in my home rather than the brandy. And this one is one of my absolute favorites. Like, I just feel like the vibe is exactly the same. I'm also steering well clear of opuntia from now on. A few years back when I was really getting into cacti, I thought that they were such a cool plant to have. They gave me very much so like nostalgia for California because you just see so many more cactus out there than you do here in the UK. And so being able to bring that into my home was something that I was quite enjoying. But I just feel like they are so not worth it for those little glocked hair spikes they have on them. Those things are killer. I cannot tell you the number of times I watered my opuntias and just like pulled my hand back because it's brushed against it, and they're just covered in these tiny little spikes that are so difficult to get out because they're like the size of tiny hairs. So I just feel like that's not worth the sort of pain. They also just didn't grow very fast. I know a lot of cacti don't grow very fast, and that's fine, but it just didn't capture me as much as I wanted it to. Now, to fill the sort of cactus void, I have some euphorbias, which aren't actually cacti, they are succulents. This one is a Euphorbia lacti dragonbone, I believe. That's what it's looking like down the bottom. This has grown so fast for me. It has been the speediest grower, grown this much since May this year. So in the last 6-7 months, it has doubled in size, which has been fantastic. And also it still gives that sort of very Western cactus style vibes without as much stress. I found this one really easy. It's much more resilient, I found. And while it does have spikes on it, they're not the kind that come off in your skin, which does make my life a little bit easier. The cats can, in theory, go near them more easily. They might get a bit scratched, but then they'd learn. Whereas with the opuntia, I feel like even if they brushed up against them, it would be a dangerous situation. So while I do keep this out of reach of the kitties, I'm not as like worried about it with them. Okay, this might be kind of a weird dupe, but my variegated Thanksgiving cactus absolutely gives me the same vibes as the Opuntia Joseph's coat I had a couple years ago. I don't know why they feel so similar in my mind. I know that they're nothing near the same, but I feel like the variegation type was quite similar, and that one, for me, it did just kind of fall over, and it still kept growing, but it just didn't stand up as right, and I feel like it grew more similarly to the Thanksgiving cactus. And this one isn't going to spike you at all. And actually it's pet safe, which makes it 1,000 times better because I'm not worried that my pets are going to get into it and harm themselves in any way, spikes or through eating it. Not that I want my pets to eat this plant, I'd rather them not. But like they could if they wanted to, and I wouldn't be too worried about it. But I just feel like it gives very much so the same vibes. And I know Opuntia's flower, and those are cool. These kind of give off that same vibe in the flower. They're not obviously not exactly the same, but these do flower as well, and so it kind of works as a dupe for that reason too. Up next, this is probably not a surprise for anyone who's been around my channel for a while. The Philodendron Pink Princess umbrella. I know they're not all pink princesses, but the pink princess, the white princess, the white knight, the white wizard, all of those sort of different like philodendron types, nah. I could never get them to grow well for me. One, I got over the pink plant fast. In general, I'm not really a big fan of colorful plants, especially pink ones. I do have some here and there, but in general, it's just not my style, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be everyone's style, but I don't really care for them, and they never really grew well. The white wizard, princess, knight, all of those, they were definitely much more my sort of style with the white variegation, and I did like them better, but I still was never able to grow them well. You can kind of see in these clips that like they tended to grow quite scraggly, and I suppose I could have tried to grow them on a moss pole with multiple different stems, and that would have helped with the fullness, but it never really hit the spot, and I never really got the sort of size up I would have wanted to out of these sort of philodendrons, and so I just don't think I ever need to get them again. I also kind of think that part of the reason I got them in the first place was because they were like new and popular at the time, and not that I think plants that are like more saturated are of less value, because I think everyone has different value for different people, but back when they were like rare and uncommon, it kind of felt like having something really cool. Even if it wasn't something that I was obsessed with, I felt cool for having one, and now I don't really get that hype anymore, and so I don't need to like feel cool for having one. I can just not have one, and that is fine with me. To be honest, I also kind of struggle to think of what I've replaced them for in my mind, and like sort of what has filled that sort of void. I suppose there wasn't very much of a void to fill when I got rid of all of my pink princess, white princess, whatevers, and so I guess it's a good thing I don't need to have those plants. But the one thing that I was thinking about the most was the sort of sectoral variegation of the white princess, etc. And what's kind of giving me that in my collection right now is my variegated Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. And yes, mine is not highly variegated at all, but that is okay. I don't really feel like I need it to be, but it is still giving nice bits of sectoral variegation that I am enjoying. That's a fun leaf as well. And also the joy of the variegated Rhaphidophora is that you kind of get fenestrations out of it as well. And I suppose this one very much so has as well gone down in price and rarity and everything. It's still not super easily accessible, but definitely much more than it was back in like 2020 when things like this and the pink princess were popular. But also it being like rare wasn't the like driving force behind me wanting to have one. I like the type of plant, I like the variegation, I like the fenestrations more than I like the rarity of it, which I mean is good. I feel like that's a better way to shop than how I was shopping back in the day, but you know, we live and we learn, and I've matured. Another philodendron type that I am over and will never be buying myself again is crawling philodendrons, things like the philodendron gloriosum. I had one for ages, and at the time I thought it was a really cool plant. I found it really interesting. I had it from quite a small plant as well, and so to watch it grow and mature and crawl, kind of fun. I'm kind of glad I had the experience because now I've done it, but I don't need to do it again. I just find that crawlers, they take up so much space in your home, like the footprint of the pot that you need to have, like a long trough pot, huge. It's like 4 or 5 times the size of a pot that I could fit elsewhere in my home. And so I feel like it just takes up unnecessary space, and living in such a small flat in London, I need to take space where I can get it. And so if I can avoid taking up too much space with something like a crawling plant in a trough, that's probably for the best. And maybe in a different home somewhere down the line, but even then, I just feel like I would rather climbing philodendron. I just find them much more interesting, and in general, I like watching them get bigger as they grow upwards. I just tend to like that. So things like the philodendron glorious, which is actually a gloriosum hybrid with a melanochrysom. I love my philodendron glorious. It has grown so well for me. It gives that sort of same velvety, like heart-shaped foliage, but it just grows up instead of across. And that just makes it so much more accessible to me, and like it fits into my space better. And yes, mine is a freaking gigantic plant. It is huge and it takes up a lot of space. but I feel like it's a manageable amount of a lot of space, if that makes sense. I don't know, it sounds weird, but it's it's how it's working in my brain, and I just much prefer that kind of thing. Also things like the Splendid, that sort of dark velvety heartleaf plant, again, it just sizes up as it grows up instead of across, and it just makes it a lot easier. Pretty much an entire genus that I will not be buying for myself again is syngoniums. Yes, I do have 2 in my home, only 2, and I have gotten them very recently. I haven't had most of my syngoniums for a very long time. I used to be really, really into them. I thought they were super cool several years back when I was just starting to like get into them. I go through phases with plants and like genuses, and I was having a syngonium phase for a while. I left that phase pretty quickly because I did not find that they grew very well for me. Yes, they can be fast growing, climbing up a stake or a pole, they can size up doing that, but I didn't really find they did that well for me in my collection. I did also like the arrowhead shaped leaves, but I feel like you can get that same vibe with things like alocasias instead of syngoniums. Like if you take this variegated Alocasia odora, and you compare it to a Syngonium mojito or Syngonium albo, I feel like they look so similar in sort of leaf shape. It gives the exact same vibes, but I have found, surprisingly, alocasias so much easier to grow in my collection. I have sort of sussed them out with the semi-hydro and the watering needs and generally the light needs. I have found that they grow very easily for me, and I'm not worried about trying to give them a pole or anything. I know I am very willing to give plants poles. I'd much rather a climbing plant than a crawling one, but I feel like if I can have some that stay a little bit more compact, that is also very useful in my collection. And so having something like an alocasia instead of a syngonium could be quite a good option. I like them. I just think like it just is, it's the same thing. I don't know why they're the same, but they're completely the same in my mind, and I'd much prefer this. The only syngonium that I do have is the Syngonium chiapense, this guy, and I have just recently got it, as well as the variegated version here, which mine is looking a wee bit sad, this variegated leaf. This one was an unrooted cutting, so it's quite possible that it might not survive. I hope it will, but we'll see. This is the only syngonium I'm going to have, and this is the first syngonium I've had in years, actually, and I have found that they are so different to the rest of the syngoniums. They are definitely a much thicker leaf, and I like this sort of round heart-shaped leaf a lot better than the arrowhead shape that syngoniums get. Also, yes, I know this one climbs. Yes, I am going to have to put this one on a pole, but I feel like it is worth that, as opposed to syngoniums, which ended up kind of looking scraggly, like, and I could kind of get the same vibe through alocasias. Why would I need to like mix the two together and have a climbing mottled syngonium? It just didn't feel like necessary for me. So I am very happy to have this. I am excited that I have joined it to my collection. So far it has been super easy growing. It's just rooting in there really well, and so very happy with this. And I think, like, I mean, I suppose it is a syngonium, so it's not a complete swap for the syngonium arrowheads, but I just feel like it's a bit easier. Okay, 2020 Emma would hate me for saying this, but I never want to buy a monstera albo again. Specifically the Borsigiana. I think most monstera albos are Borsigianas, the ones that are being sold. They're the ones with the smaller leaves, the longer internodal spacing. They tend to not get as big, and that was part of the problem for me. I've had so many over the years, and I had one for years until I think either this time last year or earlier this year, I decided to get rid of my monstera albo Borsigiana completely. I had tried growing it up a pole, and the leaves just never really sized up. It kind of kept going back and forth, even with getting fenestrations and then losing them again. It had decently nice variegation. It even gave me ghost leaves sometimes, but I never really got it to grow the way I would have wanted it to, and so I'm just kind of glad to be rid of it. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. I haven't once missed it. I haven't looked back and thought, wow, I want to get one of those again. Or like, oh, just like give me one more chance with it. No, I have never even turned back after I gave it away, and I am not mad at not having one. And so that's okay. What's kind of giving me the same vibes in my collection, I can't actually bring it over because it's too big and I don't feel like pulling it out, but it is my Mandula pothos. Typically you'll find mandulas growing in like trailing baskets like lots of other epibremnum plants, but I have decided to grow my Mandula up a moss pole. But it gives me almost the exact same vibes as my monstera albo because it doesn't have the fenestrations, which mine barely had the fenestrations anyway. So like, does it really matter if this one doesn't? Not really, but it has the same sort of sectoral variegation. It's got the same sort of heart-shaped leaves, and it basically looked the same as what my monstera looked like. And so that one has just been so much easier to care for. It has been so much lower maintenance. It doesn't complain when I sort of let the pole dry out too much. It has sized up massively in the time I've had it, and it has just been generally an easier experience. And so, honestly, unless I could find a sort of deliciosa albo or like a monstera mint or something, I don't think I'll be getting another variegated monstera again in my lifetime. Who knows, but I don't plan on it. And then the final plant that I never want to get again is schismatoglottis. Both the sort of typical Wallichii as well as the more silvery Borneo ones as well. I've had pretty much like one of every sort that you could readily get in my collecting journey, and I just really don't think that they grew well. They are so thirsty, even in semi-hydro, and like a lot of my other thirsty plants have been perfectly fine in semi-hydro. These ones, they will just drink the water up so freaking quickly that I just don't find them worth it. I also find that their leaves tend to damage quite easily because they're so thin, and so mine ended up getting like terrible brown spots and like holes and stuff. And they're also really sensitive. I had to cut some of mine back fully, and it was just a bad time, and I don't really want to do it again. I don't have the plant that I think is a good dupe for this, but this is one that I would definitely add to my collection. I saw it the other day when I shopped for it for Claire in our like shopping for each other video. The Spathophilum Ghost, that plant, so cool. It has the sort of same leaf shape and silver coloration as the more silver schismatoglottises, but it is a peace lily variety, and I feel like in general that is just so much easier. They're much more low maintenance, and even though they don't like being thirsty, all of the Spathophilum I've had and put into semi-hydro, they're chill. Even if I forget to water a couple times or they faint, they are all good. Whereas the schismatoglottis, I just have to keep watering over and over again, and they like really complain if I miss a single water. Peace lilies for me haven't, and so getting this sort of silver peace lily would be like, I think that's a wishlist plant for me right now. I've decided I would love to add one to my collection. I think they're so freaking cool. So there we go. Those are some plants that I will never be buying again. I have no plans to get them again in the future. I just do not want to add them to my collection, and so I won't. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future. If you want more videos like this, let me know that as well, and subscribe for more. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Don't forget to keep growing. Bye!